I have a problem with the film Don't Worry Darling. Now, that's not a unique position to have. A lot of people had a problem with this film. I, however, have a specific problem with it. There is a huge plot hole in this film. And by plot hole, by the way, I do mean plot hole, not the internet definition of a plot hole, which usually boils down to question that isn't specifically answered. So, straight to the point. Don't Worry Darling follows the story of Florence Pugh's Alice, a housewife who lives an idyllic life with her husband Harry Styles in a 1950s Palm Springs-esque town in the middle of fucking nowhere. While all the men go to work for the mysterious Victory Project, the women spend their days cooking, cleaning and shopping as good housewives do, and when the men return from their hard day's slog, they are rewarded with a hot meal and plenty of drink, most of which gets knocked onto the floor so they can fuck on the same table they eat at. Or at least Harry Styles gets to eat there. The one rule is, don't ask questions. Particularly, no one's allowed to ask about the Victory Project, what the men do during the day, or what the deal is with the town's charismatic cult leader, Chris Pine. After a bunch of stuff happens that doesn't make sense, Pugh starts firing off questions, and for the next hour and a half, everyone tells her to shut the fuck up before Harry Styles finally breaks and tells her what's what. Pugh promptly decides to do a runner, escaping whatever the fuck is going on, the town, her husband, and Chris Pine. Credits. What the twist is. It's virtual reality. So, it turns out that it's not the 1950s but modern day, and Harry Styles is obsessed with a podcast hosted by Chris Pine. The theme of this pod is basically, modern life is difficult, remember the good old days. Well, the good old days can be yours again, because I've got this mad VR land where you can drug women, tie them to beds and strap their eyes open like Malcolm from A Clockwork Orange. So with that in mind, let me go through the plot again with this new information. Don't Worry Darling follows the story of Florence Pugh's Alice, a modern day surgeon who, unbeknownst to her, has been drugged, tied up and Clockwork Oranged into a 1950s fantasy world by her unemployed limp-dicked husband. While all the men of the town go to work for the mysterious Victory Project out in the desert, the women spend their days cooking food that can't be eaten, cleaning fake houses with fake cleaning products, and shopping for fake digital goods with fake digital currency, as good housewives do. The men, however, spend their days not at Victory, but back up in the real world, giving their kidnapped victims sponge baths, changing catheters, bedpans and shit like that, as well as working shitty jobs to pay for all this bollocks. Each evening, they return to their fantasy land and are rewarded with a hot meal they can't really eat and plenty of drink they can't really drink, which they cannot really knock onto the floor so they cannot really fuck on the table, because in the real world they're not even touching each other. Ah, the good old days. After a bunch of stuff happens that doesn't make sense, and continues not to make sense when you do know what's happening, Pugh starts firing off questions, and for the next hour and a half everyone else tells her to shut the fuck up before Harry Styles finally breaks and tells her it's all VR, which to be honest she takes in her stride before promptly fucking off. As mentioned up top, Don't Worry Darling leaves you with several questions, as most of the setup to the twist doesn't actually match the twist, like they changed their mind about what it was actually going to be at the last minute. So, before we get into the plot hole, I present to you the section, not a plot hole, but still, come on mate. But anyway, the plot hole. The theory is that to escape this game, you have to travel out to the desert to the Victory Project HQ, where you find a magic door. Touch the magic door and boom shakalaka, you're back in the real world. Florence Pugh knows this because she did it by accident halfway through the film. The problem is, it didn't work then. She touched the door, saw some trippy visuals, and woke up back in the game. The assumption on the part of the audience is that when she left, there was someone in the real world to stop her and boot her back in. That someone would be her husband, Harry Styles. So at the end of the film, when she murks him like the mug that he is, there should be no one to stop her. Job's a good 'un. But during her earlier attempt, was it really him that stopped her? During the dinner scene with Chris Pine, her previous escape is revealed to the group, much to everyone's surprise and dismay, including Harry Styles.
Is that why you went out there? To headquarters?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but you don't know what he's doing.
He didn't know. If he didn't know, then he wasn't the one who booted her back in. So, what did happen that first time? How did she leave but then not leave? The answer? She's tied to the bed. To leave the game, assumably, once back in the real world, you'd have to physically remove the Clockwork Orange VR thing from your eyes. With her hands tied, she was unable to do that. Got stuck on a loading screen for a bit before being booted back into the game. With her final escape, she may have murked Harry Styles and offed a couple of other fools just for good measure, but back in the real world, her hands are still tied. She can't unclockwork orange herself and is just going to get booted back in, rendering the whole fucking exercise pointless. Don't Worry Darling has the look, feel, and confidence of the kind of prestige cinema that should have a bunch of laurels on its poster, but it has a plot that's been done better in a bunch of other places. On a technical level, Don't Worry Darling is a gorgeous film. Olivia Wilde directs the living shit out of it, and the cast for the most part is great. Florence Pugh is acting like her life depends on it, Chris Pine does his best with the material he's given, whilst Harry Styles is at least having a go, and probably got a good job sticker at the end of it. The problem is with the script. When the answer to all your burning questions comes, it's so fucking left field that it gives you whiplash, and the film just ends like it's trying to get out of the building before you can ask it any follow-up questions. It's a shame, but the script is nowhere near as clever as it thinks it is. The social commentary and so-called wokeness is surface level at best, as if it was written by a first-term sociology student who just read the introduction to a book on gender politics and went, yeah, I get the gist of it. As mentioned, Don't Worry Darling looks great, has a stellar cast, and it certainly isn't boring. In fact, it's compelling as fuck, but there just isn't anything under the surface. It's nothing. It's compelling nothing, but it's nothing nonetheless. It's not bad enough to be hated, not good enough to be loved. It's marvellously average. If it weren't for the drama surrounding this movie, it would have come and gone like a fart on the wind. It's currently on HBO Max in America, and in the UK it will probably end up on Film 4 at some point. As for a score, I give this film 3 red planes, and refuse to explain what that means.